All right, well, recording in progress, so that's a good indication we're ready to go. We'll call the meeting to order and welcome everyone that's joining us here tonight. We have presentations from our staff, and we'll get to that, and we also have a presentation to make before we do that. First, though, Deputy Mayor Lutz is working this evening until 7, and he will be here as soon as he can after. And Councillor Walsh is sick tonight, been sick all weekend, and not able to join us tonight. So hopefully he'll be okay for Thursday night. So before we get into the agenda, we are going to make a presentation. We're very fortunate that we have two young ladies from our town that are heading off to a national competition. And we have a certificate for them, and we want to congratulate them and wish them all the very best. And I think it would be appropriate, we'll present the certificates and a check for support from the council. We'll get a picture with council with them. But before we do that, I think Brooke is going to tell us a little bit about what they're doing, where they're off to, and what it's all about.
Yeah,
Brooke,
so
if you want to stand by the podium, that would be wonderful.
Okay. Cassie and I skate on a synchronized figure skating team called Valley Legacy when we skate out of the Kentville Skating Club. And we're going to nationals this weekend. We qualified about a month ago, and it's in Waterloo, Ontario. We spent a lot of time fundraising this season to be able to go to other competitions and including this one. So we're very grateful for the donation from the town.
Well, congratulations and good luck.
Where do you want?
Right over here, we'll go to.
Yes, I think you're on council there. Congratulations.
Thank you.
This way a little bit more, how's that?
Yeah, that's perfect, everyone. Great, I'm sure that one.
All right, great, thank you, Taylor. All right, good luck, girls.
Thank you.
Looking forward to see how you do. Okay, so let's have an approval of the agenda. Does anybody have anything to add to tonight's agenda? No, we have a little switch. We're gonna move, 6A is gonna go up underneath number 4. We have Crystal on the line to deal with that supplementary report. People that are here to hear about that, so we'll do that part first. And I think that's everything. We're gonna have a motion to approve the agenda. Councilor Jameson, second by Councilor Sereno, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion's carried. And let's go to the approval of the previous minutes, January 28th, committee of the whole. Anybody note any errors or omissions in those minutes? Deputy Mayor Lutz did point out that in the minutes, there's 2 notes of his arrival time. He was working that night as well, 7:27 and 7:37, and he wanted us to know that it was 7:27 that he arrived. So we can make that correction. Okay, so we'll approve those January 28th as amended. And February 3rd, anybody note any errors or omissions in those? Okay, hearing none, we'll approve those as circulated.
Yeah.
And we'll move on to the review of the action items. Jennifer.
So I don't have anything to update on. Completed were seen last time with the exception of just the two that we completed immediately following the meeting. So uploading the guest documents, the first reading report and the letter and check recs. And the rest are all still in progress. So unless there's any questions from any members of council, I can answer.
Questions? Great, and we'll be tracking our actions from tonight's meeting as we go. Okay, let's move on to the 6A, and welcome, Crystal, are you there online with us?
Evening, yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you for your supplementary report there. Going to ask you if you wouldn't mind just quick background on that and then to review those items, and then we'll see if council has any questions on those.
So council received comments from the public at the public hearing last week, and then asked staff to go back and think about two particular issues that were identified by the public. One, they're both revolved around the safety of the driveway from Commercial Street to the site. So in consultation with Tim Booter, your town engineer, we came up with some more detailed provisions for council's consideration. Previously, the detailed lighting and the safety measures, the traffic calming measures were not detailed. So what is before you in the red in the report are details for you to consider, and if that satisfies council in terms of the issues that were brought up by the public in terms of safety of that driveway. So you'll see that item 1, which has been added in the report in red, both these.
Crystal, can you make that a little larger? Or Krista.
Yeah.
And Krista, can people hear her okay? I was gonna ask her if she needs to speak up a bit. Yes, please, can you be a little louder?
I absolutely can. Is that better?
I know you can. Would you please be a little louder?
Even louder.
Okay,
Is
all
that
right, that's, yeah.
okay? I'm looking at a different screen, so I'll look at this one. I think it'll help. So the two issues were around lighting and traffic calming. So these two have been added to issues, clauses have been added to the draft development agreement. One is about using a combination of rumble strips and speed bumps as traffic calming measures and 50-meter increments along the private driveway. The design and the layout still will be determined at the development permit stage, but it does require the rumble strips and speed bumps, and that was seen as the best tool by the municipal engineer. Secondly, then we also added a requirement for decorative street lights every 25 meters along the private driveway. The ratio between the spacing of the light posts and the height of the post shall not exceed 5:1. So we wanted to have some way of measuring that. And that we also are looking at a lighting plan at the time of permitting to it. And really that's about ensuring that lighting does not negatively impact the neighbors. So it's where the light is directed. So those two issues will be added to the added to the draft development agreement for your consideration. In addition, the draft development agreement has a couple of other small changes that were discussed at the public hearing. So reduction in the setback for both buildings C and D. And the developer has asked for consideration that the landscaping may not be required given the width of that right of way. So that is in there as also possible language. So the draft development agreement is in front of you. You've received the staff report. You've heard from the public. The draft development agreement has been amended to respond to the issues that council identified as requiring additional work. And now the development agreement is in front of you for your decision tonight.
Thank you, Crystal. So any questions of particular those two items? Or of Crystal on anything with this? Councilor Hibbs.
I only have one question, and that's concerning the installation of rumble strips and speed bumps. Was there any discussion as to signage on that at all?
We did have some signage in the draft development agreement, so that was not added, but if you look in the original draft development agreement, there was some signage provisions already, which will be determined at time of permitting.
Or we will have some signage up there, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Thank you.
Let
Any
me,
other questions?
let me confirm that, sorry, I just want to confirm that while you're asking other questions, and get the exact reference, just for the record, so if you don't mind, I'll do that while council is considering other issues.
So any other comments or questions on this? What, if we have the information we need, then we will, if the council wishes at this point, with everything we have in front of us, we will go into a special council meeting following this, prior to in camera after the mayor's report, and entertain a motion on this, and that would be the next steps. Unless we want any further information, but if we're happy with what we have here now, based on what we were looking for, then that will be the direction. Okay. All right. So, Crystal, we're gonna move on then. If you do find that, please just chime in and we'll deal with that and keep on going. Unless I talk long enough for you to catch up and you have it.
I have it.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
It's section 3.3.14. The developer shall install signage to increase pedestrian and car safety. So there is I'm confirming that there is a signage requirement in the draft development agreement.
Thank you.
Jennifer?
I just wanted to confirm based on Mayor Cassidy's comments that Crystal's probably gonna leave us, so council has the information. There's no more questions you have of Crystal. You're ready to make a decision at a special council meeting immediately following this meeting. Otherwise, we would ask for different direction right at this time.
I'm fine.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. That will be our intention.
I will drop off, but Jen, if you need me to enter back in, if there's a question or something, just text me and I'll try and pop back on.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Okay, thank you, Crystal. Okay, let's move on to our presentation. We're really excited to have this presentation. Staff have worked very hard at this, and our committee, under Councillor Quackenack, have been dealing with this for some time. So we're ready to have a presentation to council or committee of the whole tonight on this. So you guys can introduce yourselves and then tell us who's going to talk about what. So.
Let's be kids, just in case we need our notes for reference. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Taylor Boylan. I'm the recreation coordinator.
And I'm Jordan Head, I'm the active coordinator here at the town of Berkeley.
Thank you, Jen.
Better for me.
So we're going to kind of tag team this a bit. We both have pieces of this that we have worked closer on than the other. So we'll kind of maybe interject with each other a little bit, but.
So under the Accessibility Act, municipalities now have to have an accessibility advisory committee, which we've had since 2021, and develop an accessibility plan, which was approved in March of 2022. And then every 3 years, municipalities have to do an update on those plans. So we're at 2025, year 3, so we'll have a plan ready to release for April 1st.
So alongside of that, earlier this year, it came outwardly that municipalities, villages will be the first public sector bodies that are prescribed under the Dismantling Racism and Hate Act. requiring them to have plans that will address systematic hate, inequity, and racism by April 1st, 2025. So this is kind of a background on how we got here. So we've had an accessibility plan that has been approved by council since March of 2022. And over the last 3 years, there's been ongoing accessibility work with the Accessibility Advisory Committee, with reports back to council to give information on how progress is going within that committee. When the information came out from the province, requiring municipalities to have plans in place, staff attended an equity and anti-racism symposium to learn more about how we can make those plans happen. So we took that information to our Accessibility Advisory Committee and made a decision to combine plans for this year because both plans need to be done by April 1st of 2025. So working with the Accessibility Advisory Committee, we came together and created a plan that has been included in the package for tonight that it addresses both accessibility and equity.
So in the past 3 years since our plan was approved, these are some of the key highlights of what Berwick has accomplished. Certainly not all, and we should be proud of everything we've accomplished. This is just some of the key ones. So examples like new push-powered signal crosswalks. We now have the Voyant Alert app. There is plans for Town Hall to update their front desk area in 2025, and our pay what you can options for programs like day camp. So some of our goals moving forward, this is data that we took from the last survey as well as our new survey. So I'm sure an ever-ending battle for other municipalities is improving existing infrastructure when it comes to accessibility. And then including the Accessibility Advisory Committee on built environment projects to ensure that accessibility standards are being met and we're involved in the processes. And then communication, budgeting for ASL interpreters, and inclusive promotion and communication of services. So for employment, we would like to see diversity and cultural training for staff and council, partner with community agencies to help develop and run inclusive program. An example of that would be to partner with Parasport to come run Try It sessions in the gym. And then community engagement, create opportunities for the community to come together in meaningful and constructive ways.
So outlined in the plan's a 16-page document, and it's building on the successes of the plan that previously existed 3 years ago, which was a little bit longer. It was about closer to 40 pages. So that plan still exists, but this is further work. So there are action items outlined in the plan to help us reach our goals. Looking at the fact that we reached so many of our goals in the earlier plan. So there's action items for each year broken down into foundation building, where we would look at policy development, staff training, and community listening, much of the things that Jordan talked about with our goals, and outlines how we will get to those pieces. So how we will develop policies, how we will work on staff training, and how we will listen to the community. So earlier this year, for example, we did a community survey to guide this work. And a lot of the respondents asked to have more surveys and more opportunities to have a voice heard. So those are things we'd like to build upon to make sure that we are listening to the community and shaping a plan that really is keeping everyone's opinions in mind. Looking at year 2, putting together some pilot programs and awareness. So making sure our promotions are inclusive, expanding some of our community events and including accessibility enhancements to our existing programs and activities. Looking into year 3, that would be expansion and implementation. So really making sure that those policies have been updated, doing some inclusion audits with the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and engaging with the youth and the school. So some of the outlines in the plan are that we'd like to include a youth voice at the committee level with our Accessibility Advisory Committee. And then moving into year 4, it's a comprehensive plan adoption. So further plan development, because all these plans will have to be updated again in 3 years' time. Sustainability measures to make sure that the work can continue to be ongoing, and celebration commitment to really celebrate that we have, in the last 3 years, we made really great accomplishments. I'm sure in the next 3 years, we'll make even more. So really celebrating that with the community so that they can understand that we're all working together to make sure that these things happen. So some important considerations. Council has seen the plan, and the plan is included in the public package. This plan has been shaped by community consultation, and we did bring it forward with AMANS and the province to get some feedback, and the plan is further shaped by that feedback. So we made sure that everyone was kind of involved in the process, and it wasn't just staff writing a plan. This plan was written with the Accessibility Advisory Committee as well as with the community feedback. All municipalities in the province are expected to have plans in place by April 1st, 2025. So our hope is that this plan will be in place by April 1st, 2025. And by 2028, a comprehensive equity plan is the goal for the town of Berwick. So because of the short timelines, this was work that was done alongside the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and maybe that'll be the plan for the future by 2028. But we want to make sure that our plan is really comprehensive and an overall equity plan that is serving all residents of our community, not just focusing on an accessibility piece or in a diversity piece. We want to make sure that we're looking at equity as a whole. And it's also important to note that this plan is a revision to the 2022 accessibility plan. So that plan and all its associated documents continue to exist in the form that they were in 2022 when they were approved by council.
Taylor, can you go back? Can you explain what AMANS is and what their role
Yeah.
is in this?
Absolutely. So they are the Association of Municipal Administrators in Nova Scotia. And so they are. Good job. I did good on that one. So they're an independent body who help administrative staff for municipalities in their work. So they do a lot of training opportunities and things along that lines. And they also work with the province, especially in this area with accessibility and equity. So they have an entire department right now that's only working on this work. So we've had some meetings with both the province and AMANS and the province together, one-on-one meetings specific to our plan. So if council had any questions for us, we're happy to answer questions.
Councilor James.
Hey, what feedback, if any, have you had from the province of Nova Scotia on the plan? What directions did they give, or were they fully fine with it?
So that's a really great question. So they were very happy with our plan. So they can't say, hey, this is the right thing to do and that you did the right work. They can say, hey, you're missing this piece of the plan, or hey, this is what needs to be included. We didn't get a whole lot of that feedback. They are really impressed with the choice that we made to look at an overall equity plan in 3 years' time. A lot of municipalities have done this kind of off the side of their desks and thrown it all together into one plan, where we have a plan for a different plan in 3 years' time, however that looks. There were some things around some wording in the plan that we changed with their feedback, as well as just giving a little bit more background information. Our original plan didn't have as much information on the background of how we got here. So we took that feedback and changed it a little bit more.
Carol, we had pretty good success with the survey, good response to that. Can you give
Yeah,
us a little more info on that,
absolutely.
what we found, how many, just some of that?
Absolutely. So it was an online survey. Again, I think it's important to know that this was a fairly quick turnaround. This information was given from the province in 2022, but was told in the future municipalities will be required to. And then it was late last spring when the information came out that it was actually going to be this April. So with things such as council change, staff changes, committee changes, we were a little bit delayed on getting the survey out. So we went the route of doing an online survey with paper copies available in different places. So we had it available at the library, with some community organizations and churches took the survey, and also had it available online. We had 65 responses in the span of 2 weeks, which is fairly good for a small community. And I would say that when we spoke with the province at AMANS, they said a lot of communities had much smaller feedback. A comparable municipality locally that is quite large compared to us had less responses to their survey. So they felt like our survey really gave some information. Our survey gave a lot of information of how people feel about how they live in this community and the services that they receive and the barriers to receiving those services. So there was a bit of feedback about some of the questions were, do you experience barriers when you go to a town-owned facility? Have you experienced racism or discrimination in your day-to-day life in this town? The answers were not surprising, but they were also very positive. A lot of the feedback we got was positive. That was, here's a small step you can make to make more changes. And that information was used for the plan. I would say we made changes based on how the community said that they wanted to engage. And a lot of members of the community have said they want to continue to have these conversations. So parts of the plan do take that into consideration, that we would like to have some more community feedback as we move forward, because the plan will change over time, over the next 3 years, based on what the community wants, because it's their plan, it's their community.
Councilor Klein.
So this isn't really a question, but I really appreciate the work that you, Taylor and Jordan have done on this. This was a really quick turnaround. The committee met for the first time officially in January. And we have a report and a plan ready to go. So we put in extra meetings and did some additional work that I'm really impressed with how quickly we got to where we got.
We were very fortunate that the committee was so willing to take on this task because it is outside the mandates of the accessibility committee. The accessibility pieces absolutely fall under their mandates, but the rest, the equity and the anti-racism and the hate, do not fall under their mandates, and they were very adaptable and willing to do the work with us, and we're really appreciative of that.
Anybody else? And thank you very much for all your efforts on this, and just on the committee, I was attending those meetings. We have a very engaged committee. They are very interested in doing this work and seeing this work through and being involved in probably some things they don't need to be involved with, which is really nice because they're really engaged in this stuff. But so it's good to look for a lot of good stuff to come forward on this as we go along. So great job, and keep up the good work. There's a lot more to come on this, isn't there?
Absolutely,
Yes.
Yeah.
absolutely. We see more, lots more of us.
Yeah.
Thank
All right.
you, everyone.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
So that brings us down to, we're trying to follow along, we're at 6B, the information report on the operating capital budget version 2. So this is the response to those items that we had asked for at the last meeting, and the staff did a great job getting back to us in response to some of those, what we had talked about, what we said we look into, and some of the numbers with that. Tonight, we're gonna review them, but there's no decision-making in this. We're not going into any exercise around the budgeting. It's just more information for us. And we'll add this info with the information that we will get on Thursday night. And then our next budget meeting will be March 11th. We will have more thorough discussion on this stuff. So tonight, it's a chance to see them, maybe ask some questions about them. But we're not gonna get into any kind of budget deliberations per se. So Lisa, do you want to take us through it? And
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So, next slide, please. So the changes that we've seen from version 1 to version 2 is a savings or reduction in the proposed shortfall of just over 34,000. So version 2 of the operating budget currently has a shortfall of almost 47,000. So as outlined in the information report, these are some of the notable changes to revenue that we've seen. So an increase in the Municipality Kings operating grant to the fire department, which you'll see the, I guess, counterpart to that on the expense side as we've made some adjustments to the fire services budget. We've increased the interest on tax revenue. We've increased that by 16,000, and that is a reflection of what we have incurred this year, and we expect that to stay around the same level next year. Our interest on PACE, we do have a reduction of 83,000 or 8,300, sorry, in that. No, that's right. And essentially that's as those contracts on PACE are getting paid off, then we're going to be receiving less interest year over year. Fitness center memberships, we've done a review of the memberships year to date this year, and based on the forecast to year end, we've done a reduction of 5,000 there. The local grants for the Visitor Information Center, we've included 2,000 there, which I believe offsets some of the wage expense. We've included the local grant from the municipality of Kings. We're estimating $12,000 is available to help fund our crossing guards that we have here in town throughout the school year. And we're also proposing to utilize safe restart funds to help cover the Brightly work order software that's been proposed, with the 6,700 being the annual operating costs for the first year. So that was our changes to our revenue. So changes that we've seen to our expenses, we've done a reduction of 1,000 to grants to organizations. That was the active kids, healthy kids. Which no longer exists.
Yeah.
Okay. So we reviewed our salary preparation. So we verified links and then confirmed the CPI, EI, and CPP and WC maximums for the year. And in version 1, we'd had an estimate. Now we have the final numbers. So that was a reduction in close to 21,000. Our administration, professional development, one of the directives that council had provided in version 1 was to go back and review professional development. So we were able to postpone some opportunities, and we're able to find savings of 4,500. The office supplies reduction of 1,500 is essentially supplies that relate to BEC, so they've been reallocated into their budget. The tax exemptions, we have reduced to reflect 24-25 actual. Our audit fees, so we have a combination here. So we did increase the financial resource support by 5,000. But we had 20,000 that we were able to reallocate to BEC to cover audit services, as that is a shared service. So the net difference there being the 14,000, of savings there. We do have our education estimate, which is based on the enrollment numbers and our uniform assessment. So we did get our enrollment numbers just last week. So that did come in $850 higher than what we had anticipated, but I think that was still a pretty good guesstimate that we used to prepare. So our fire maintenance, so that's increased 16,000, and that is some light bulbs that the fire hall is looking to replace their existing light bulbs with LED, so that will eventually recognize hopefully a savings with their energy and utility bill there. Replacement and repair to some gutters, and it's for 2, what did he call it? Air compressor things, which helps with the water storage tank to fill up pumper trucks. So obviously I'm not technical when it comes to fire services, so pumper things. So the net increase there is 16,000. Again, we've adjusted the municipality Kings grant to reflect the overall budget and their portion. Again, that is an estimate, and once we get the fire service calls, that drives the percentage that the municipality Kings pays. And we typically receive the call information around the end of March. So we usually budget one thing and then do a true up through the year. Public works, repairs and maintenance, we've done a reduction of 3,000 from Aaron on repairs and maintenance. Just leave it at that. So the public works salaries, we included 2.3% of the CPI. In the original version, we just had the existing salaries at the 24-25 level. So we did inflate version 2 by the 2.3%. However, we are entering into collective bargaining next week, so the wages are still essentially outstanding and very likely that they will change through the bargaining.
Paving, we've added in the sidewalks patching into our paving budget, because essentially it is your paving and patching budget. And where it's not prolonging life and redoing the entire sidewalk, that is just an operational item. Our traffic services, which is your traffic control, your line painting, don't know what else you might have in there.
Line painting and traffic.
Okay, beautiful.
Signers.
So we've done a reduction there of 2,400. King's Transit, we've received an updated, I guess, number and formula, which was an increase of 4,000 to their budget. Valley Waste,
Sorry, it was to include the capital portion that we missed in version 1.
Okay.
That's what the 4,000 is.
Valley Waste is a reduction of 1. The MPS review, as we discussed, I believe at the last council meeting, we've included 13,000 of additional cost for that project. And Parks and Maintenance has seen a reduction of 5,000
For Tube Park.
for Two Park. Thank you. Were there any questions on the changes that we've included before we continue on?
I think I understood that the fire services does take into consideration our shared arrangements with the municipality. Is that
Yes.
correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so just as a reminder, so 1 cent on the tax rate, both your commercial and residential components, the total of that is 24,190. And again, the average assessment under cap here within the town of Berwick in 2024, it was just over 208,000. This year, that same property would see an assessment value of 211,700. Utilizing the existing tax rate, the property owner for that property would see an increase for the year of $48. So just wanted to reiterate that and have that kind of in mind as we continue to work through the presentation. So this section is with respect to the follow-up items that council has provided through the several budget meetings that we have had. So if there are questions as we go through, or I don't know if you wanted to hop in here.
Sure, maybe we can just highlight one sort of per page and stop and see if there's any questions. I'd like to just on this page highlight the fitness center. So one of the questions that was raised was possibly closing the fitness center to see a savings in the net cost to the town. However, staff has reviewed that, and given that we have a long-term 20-year lease with KMCC, and the fact that it wouldn't be a straight savings if you're closing, because you do have staff that work there that would need time to wind down operations. So this is not an immediate strategy that staff is recommending that council consider for budget savings. So we did look at it because it was one of the ones that council mentioned, but given the significant amount of time and cost to wind down service and look at this, we're not recommending to move forward. Any questions on any of those on this page?
Question on the first item there, the increased membership. We've done a thorough analysis on membership and the availability of open spaces during the time of day at the center. I've seen or am aware that, it's busy at certain times of day, but not busy at other times of the day. Is there a way to focus some membership during those less busy times of day, within, I know other gyms that have gone out or fitness centers have gone out and said, if you're coming during this period of time, then you may be eligible for a discount and getting those numbers up during that time, because primarily, or as I see it, it's a numbers and membership issue.
It is, I don't know, Katie, if you wanna just, whether that's been looked at specifically.
So we've tried a number of combinations of offering classes at different times and different days. And to be honest, right now, the problem is even finding someone to offer a class. You might see, we have 2 fitness instructors. They're doing as much as they want to, or they're able to do, and not interested in expanding. It's very difficult to find people to run the classes. And even if so, due to our space, we're limiting at classes at 8 to 10 people. We found that afternoon time period is quiet because people are not tending to work out during the afternoon time period. So we've tried morning classes, afternoon, evening. There's been a variation of those types of programs offered that didn't see a major change in membership with any of that fluctuation. One thing we have kind of chatted about, if it's quiet in the afternoon, looking at the possibility of, we did used to close for an hour during lunch, the lunch period during COVID, to do some additional cleaning, which gave us an extra hour at the end of the day. So there might be some possibility to look at the hours of operation during the day, not extending the overall amount of hours open, but maybe spreading them apart if people are looking to come later in the evening, but then that would mean that you'd be closing those quieter hours in the afternoon. So there's things we can look at that way that wouldn't have an overall impact on the amount that we're paying staff, but may allow the facility to be open to the public for a longer, different period of time.
Yes,
Just
go
make
ahead.
a comment. So I truly believe that staff has spent a lot of time assessing membership in the 3 years that I've been with the town. And I really believe that the little bit that we're going to generate on top of what we already have will be minimal, and council should look at the budget and the net impact to the tax base as being, you're either happy with that or you're not, because I don't think we're gonna increase membership enough to cut that deficit to break even. And I would just ask council to consider that when you're considering the budget is, we will do everything we can to continue looking at it and driving membership as much as we can to increase it, but we're not expecting to break that even point year after year, and would like council to keep that in mind year after year throughout the budget. I don't know what else we can really do to get to that break even part. And we've spent a lot of staff time, both at the director level and at the staff level at the fitness center, trying to assess changes to make. And those changes have resulted in a couple $1,000.
Just to add to that, if we thought we wanted to launch some sort of campaign to increase membership, then that would be a costly venture. You know, we'd have to invest in that, hoping to get some return on that. So it's a risk. You know, you spend X number of dollars on somebody else because, as we've said, it's our existing staff can't do any more. They're operating the fitness center. So to be out there doing membership drives and those kinds of things would be beyond them to do. So it may be something that we want to talk about investing in at some point. When we get into our strategic planning exercise in the spring later on, we might see that as a priority. But again, it's an investment hoping for a longer term return that we might want to do. So I just, leave that, but I think we have exhausted a number of things within the ability of our existing staff. They either work at the fitness center or they could be out pounding the pavement trying to get members. And they can't do both at the same time. So we would have to look at another approach that would increase our membership.
I just wanted to highlight it, that's all. I'm a member. So, and I appreciate the membership that's up there, and I do see a lot of people that receive benefits that they would not have if it was not here in town, and the staff have done a wonderful job from what I can see in my short period up there. I just want to make sure that we've explored as many avenues as possible.
Absolutely.
And we've looked at and I know that we've looked at other fitness centers and tried to be comparable and compatible. And I just know that we have to keep, because it isn't at a break-even level, the town is subsidizing it to an extent. How do we justify that? And the justification is, do we support it or not? And I agree with that.
And if I could just add that I agree that, I think you summed that up very well, and I think that staff will always continue to look at options. I just don't want council to depend on those options to get to the break-even point for this budget, I think is, if I could summarize where I was trying to come from with those thoughts.
Thank you.
Okay, let's carry on down the list then. Any other questions?
Okay,
Is there another
so
one you want to highlight there?
not on that page. So Lisa already highlighted that $4,500 for staff training has already been, so when it says potential budget impact, it already has been included in version 2. We would be looking for further direction from council if they were looking to reduce any of the travel and conferences under the council portion of the budget, but we would need further direction from council on what those would be exactly. We have considered subcontracting services, and it is something that we do assess all the time if we ever have that capacity within the municipality. Though we do find it hard as a small municipality to be the one with the capacity, but it is something that we will continue to assess. We just don't see any potential budget savings for 25-26.
Deputy Mayor.
I was just gonna say, what our thing, we've been lucky this year, but would our company be one of the people that we send our people out as we have in the past? Would that be one of our?
Yes, but it impacts the Berwick Electric budget, not the town.
That's
Yeah,
what I thought.
that's where our opportunities have always lied. So yes, there's opportunity, but unfortunately not within the town's budget. So on the next page, so we did calculate what a 0% increase, so no CPI on staff wages. And I do just want to highlight that council is obligated and required to provide cost of living increase to all of our union employees. So that would be about half of our employees will automatically receive at least 2.3% as of April 1st, 2025. So to treat both union and non-union separately in this case, we do a lot at the management table when we recognized inequities between the two groups to try to bring them closer together. And this would unfortunately be one more area that would bring us farther apart in terms of equity in the organization. And then further, I noted this at the last meeting, we do have a number of intermunicipal service agreement organizations which councils around this table represent town of Berwick on those boards, which have already approved cost of living increases at a higher rate than 2.3 because they calculate their cost of living differently and earlier in the year. So those employees would already be receiving an increase. So just something to consider from morale point of view, and the long-term investment in staff has on the organization a positive return and something that we would like to continue to see going forward. And then the CPI, so we did calculate what CPI would be on the adjusted increases to council's honorarium per policy. So this is just recognizing the CPI, not the lump sum that has been adjusted to the honorariums already per policy. And then on the next, oh, sorry, I should pause there to see if there's any questions on that page.
Questions or comments from anybody? Oh, carry on.
So again, we looked at our IMSA organizations. So those acronyms below are all of the ones that we have signed IMSA, so intermunicipal service agreements with, which have obligations on the town to provide financial support. They also have obligations for what your termination clause is. And I do want to highlight that myself, as well as our director of finance and other staff, do engage with these organizations to ensure efficient operations and provide feedback into their budgeting processes. So in terms of their budgets, we do have an oversight component to it. And most of these organizations are going to be providing services that we would not be able to provide at that level of investment if we had to do it on our own. So although we can look at this long term, right now there's no potential impact for the upcoming budget for budget savings. And we should be careful what we do with these organizations moving forward, because they do provide a lot of benefit to the town and to our residents, and we would be hard pressed to offer it at a lower investment. Any questions on those ones? Okay.
Just a comment on that as well. So if we decided not to continue with the partnership with this, it would be, there's a fair bit of time required just simply to withdraw. And then let alone the time and effort and work it would take to reestablish that service on our own, whichever one it may be. So it's, again, when we get into some strategic planning, if there's certain ones or certain things you want to look at differently, it's more of a strategic effort and strategic longer term approach. If we didn't want to continue with one of these, that we would need to spend more time and effort at looking at the pros and cons and how long it would take and when it would happen. So just wanted to add that part as well. It's tough to get immediate savings in a
Yeah, that's good. So these kind of go into our energy sector. So for area, there was the idea that area would pay travel expenses for board and staff to travel to meetings. So this is definitely one that we can bring up through the budgeting process. Though of all the IMSAs that we're involved with, it's not typical that they would pay for expenses related to attending regular meetings. They would, though, if the chair was attending training or a conference, likely the organization would cover that expense because the chair is doing that on behalf of the organization, not on behalf of the town or the Berwick Electric or town of Berwick. So we don't immediately are not suggesting that we would see any potential impacts there. The area to pay admin fees for CAO and Director of Finance. So this was discussed previously that in the past, area would provide an admin fee back to the towns for the time that the CAO spent supporting the operations of the organization. And last year in 24-25, this was removed from the budget. However, we are coming into a new budget season or session. We know that some things are changing with the direction of area. So this would be an area yeah, that we do see some potential here to receive additional admin fees back for the CAO and potentially for the Director of Finance as well. And so we're looking at potentially $20,000 to $30,000. So you could look at it as maybe 1 cent that you could budget to receive admin fees for CAO and Director of Finance. And then for the area dividend as well, the budget from 24-25. So our dividend comes from the previous fiscal year. So this fiscal year was budgeted at $253,000. Of 27% comes to the town of Berwick, which is about $68,000. However, in December, when we received our 9-month year-to-date variance report, they were in a deficit of 100,000. So there's still 3 months left, and I know that the treasurer for area mentioned there were some invoices that either haven't been received or haven't been billed back to the electric utilities. So I wouldn't recommend that council bank on getting the entire $68,000, but you may be comfortable in taking the risk of putting in about 1 cent worth. And then if we do receive more than that 1 cent, then you could put it into operating reserve. Any questions on those ones? And BC dividend, we don't expect to be in the position to provide a dividend to the town next year. So the next one is sale of property. So the only property we've identified is 228 Main Street, and staff is recommending that we don't consider moving forward with any sales of that property until the stormwater management plan is done and we fully understand what role that property may play in our stormwater management plan, structure, infrastructure. And then we did look at adding CPI to rental and fees, and although it's not in version 2, the impact will be very minimal, but it is something that we could still add. Okay, any questions on those?
If we were to put a number in the sale of the property, I understand you're saying, what would we expect?
I haven't looked at the assessment, so we are not able to sell property unless it's being sold for affordable housing, and that has to be demonstrated. And I can't remember the way in the MGA that it has to be demonstrated, but we cannot sell property for less than fair market value.
Of course. Yeah.
So I believe the last time I looked at the assessment on that property, it was around 60 to 70,000 potentially. Sorry. So I don't think that it's worth putting $60,000 or $70,000 of potential revenue in there until we get stormwater management plan back, and council fully considers the pros and cons of further selling that property. There may be potential passive recreation opportunities in the future. There may be people looking to do something there, but I think until we understand fully how that property might be used in our stormwater management plan, I would recommend us holding off on considering any revenue from it.
Somebody is 60,000.
Thank you.
And the timeline for the stormwater is just from.
I believe
from
it's
my
in
memory,
summer, August,
September.
August, September.
2020.
So to head into next year's budget.
Next year's budget, yeah.
Yes. Got just a few more.
Okay,
Unless
yeah,
there's any
no,
more.
carry on.
Okay, grants to organizations. So council suggested a 25% decrease in our grants to org. Our current level is at about 30,000, so 25% reduction would be about 7,500. Again, there's no criteria or policy in place for these grants, so we would really seek council's direction on what grants would receive reduction. And just to clarify, because we talk about IMSA organizations and other organizations, so Kings Point to Point is a grant that we provide, although it's provided under our transportation budget. We do not have a formal IMSA with that organization. So I just wanted to point it out. I'm not recommending anything, but it just to make sure that council is aware of that grant. Removing the mesh internet, thought this was more than it was, but it's about $1,000. So I think it's well worth its investment to provide the internet to the community. There was a suggestion for additional levy for environmental rate. Again, the stormwater management plan will play a role in what those recommendations may be. And it will more likely be a levy for capital reserves. So no immediate or no potential budget impact for this coming year. And then council asked about winter maintenance, which we have a discussion in camera later because there are some contract and personnel discussions that would need to take place in a sensitive manner. And then the last two items are actually additions to the budget. So two things that have been mentioned that we're still waiting for feedback on, and the survey that we launched today for our budget survey, and also will be available at the meeting on Thursday evening, asked the question of including a seasonal parks position, which would be an additional $24,000 over what we already have in the budget for one 16-week casual parks position, and a part-time bylaw officer, which would be about $30,000. And there was a request to look at sharing that position with other municipalities, so I don't have a full answer on that. However, giving some thought to it, I don't think we would look at, I would recommend that we cost share on 50% of a part-time position. We would cost share on 50% of a full-time position to get that part-time. So don't see any direct cost savings. There might be a few realized in the end, but I would still budget the $30,000 increase for that one. Is there any questions on any of those?
Just on the last two items, I know this is operating budget, not capital, but what would the capital aspects be related to those two positions? Would there be any capital?
Not for the bylaw, no. So you're thinking providing any in-kind resource to assist with capital projects?
A new office,
Yeah.
a new truck, whatever it may be.
So the bylaw would have maybe some technology, a phone, a laptop, which would be operating. And the seasonal parks would not have any, again, probably a phone, because we use phones instead of radios, but that would be about it. No significant capital investments with those two.
Thank you.
Okay, any further comments or questions? So just to summarize, we have seen from, as you know, we worked through the budget in a number of versions to get to a point where we can balance and set a tax rate. So we are working through the versions, and we've asked staff, the versions tend to change as new numbers come up to speed and we add them, which is kind of what Lisa has taken us through. Then we had a number of items that council identified, and I think we've done a thorough job on both those things, of which we asked for more information on where we might find some savings, which is this particular list that Jennifer just took us through. Then we will have public information session on Thursday night, which primarily will be to share with the public how the whole budgeting operation works, but we are asking them as well for some feedback on our budget and on our services and what new things we might want to add or what things we might want to take away. So we'll have some additional information from that. With all those pieces, then we'll have more of a discussion on March 11th to work our way through and try to get to a balanced budget and be ready to set the tax rate at a special meeting somewhere around the end of March. Most likely, if we're ready, it'll be the committee of the whole meeting on the 25th. So that's kind of the process that we're looking at going forward. Thursday evening, as I mentioned, is the public information session, and the format that we're looking at for that, we're going to be at the Lions Hall, and it's a combination of presentations and information sharing. It's going to be really important to give the public a sense of the budget scope that we're involved with. So it's the town budget, it's the electric commission budget, it's the area budget, it's some of those IMSA, as Jennifer referred to either. We have some oversight on those, like where staff are involved in a lot of different budget, and there's a lot of budgeting that takes place as part of the whole budget process. So we'll go over that. We'll talk about some of those numbers that Lisa shared with us in previous presentations about some of those expenses that we have no control over and how they impact on our ability to make decisions and those kinds of things. We'll get into that. Then we will get into some smaller groups where we'll take and identify some of our actual department budgets, department heads, when people can sit with them and talk about that service within those departments and share specifically some of those numbers. And if we have a big enough group, we're gonna go into 3 different groups, and I hope we're gonna have a good turnout and we'll be able to do that. And we're gonna ask people for some feedback. We'll give them a number of opportunities. We have some survey questions we're gonna ask them. We're gonna have a vehicle where they can write it on the table, not actually on the table, but on flip chart paper on the table, and just provide some instant feedback, and then we'll collect all that we'll use in our next piece. So that's kind of how we're looking for Thursday night to roll out. So a lot of information sharing on our part, because we really think it's important that our public come to these meetings and understand how complicated and how difficult some of this budget work is, and the amount of work that goes into that. And then we want to give them, of course, some opportunity for some feedback on our services and the budget. And we're going to probably count on a couple of counselors to do some facilitating in those groups, which is just making sure people try to stay on track. If we're at the table that's talking about community development, economic development, then let's stay on topic there, and people can chat about public works when they move to the next table. So it's just some of that kind of work, and so I'll check in with you about that. Jennifer, what time is it?
Nothing for the meeting. I'm not sure, we still have a few more slides on capital and
Oh, we
then-
do? Well, let's
Yes.
do them.
And in particular, when you talked about information we're sharing and some of the tough choices or decisions that council may have ahead of them, we also have some FCI
Oh, we're gonna do that
financial
tonight too?
condition indicator
Oh.
scenarios on what council needs to put aside if you want to pay for future capital projects. So we do have all of
Oh,
them.
well, okay, I thought you were saying that
Yeah,
Thursday.
I
We're gonna get it
know, well,
tonight
you know.
and get on Thursday.
Yes, just let it percolate.
Okay, let's do it. Sorry.
That's no problem.
So we've summarized the capital projects here. We took some feedback and have flushed through where some of the projects lie. So, excuse me, looking at your 25-26, which is the upcoming year for wastewater. These are the projects which have been identified as priorities and currently included in the budget with the net impact to the town. So if there's any questions, clarification required around these ones, I would direct you to ask Aaron. If not, just the snapshot here of the public works projects. So again, nothing new has been added, but still maybe some timing. We have the transportation plan, which we've put into next year. And essentially this will help inform the design of our street projects. So certainly important to have this plan conducted prior to beginning design and refurbishment of our significant street projects. And the last one here is our community development / parks. And those are the projects which we've identified for next year. One of the significant changes here is the boxcar finishes. So we're just down to the bare minimum, I guess, to get the doors upgraded and the interior finished. Here's, the next one is just the pie chart here of the capital funding sources. So as you see here, we are relying heavily on being successful with our grant applications between both the federal and provincial opportunities, which we've applied for. At present, there is no capital being funded under general operating, 1% from your operating reserves, 14% from debt, and 1% from sewer operating, and the other contributions of 2%, which you would see, I believe they come from Safe Restart for 25-26. So I will just pause there and see if council has any additional questions or feedback about the capital component.
Council James. Comes down to the sewer operating, 1%. Is that typical for most towns at a 1% level, especially when you're going through a major capital upgrade?
No, it is not. So you'll see that in version 3, when we will be bringing back for discussion our sewer rate increases, staff intend to propose funding some of your projects for wastewater treatment from the sewer rate, as well as a transfer to reserve to help fund future capital projects as well. And there's also, if you noticed back on the wastewater treatment plant, the $100,000 that has been earmarked for the wastewater repair on Commercial Street in front of Wilson's Home Furniture. That really should be coming out of your sewer rate. So that will be a recommendation that staff make to ensure that it's coming directly from your sewer rate rather than from your tax base. I'm trying to think, and also repayment of the operating reserves for the 37,000 that we utilized to replace the UV lights. Because really it is common and best practice to have your sewer, your wastewater operate as its own entity. So your operations, your capital projects should be funded through the sewer rates, essentially. And any surplus or deficit would be covered off within the sewer operating reserve.
And in that calculation, will there be a replenishment of our reserves, or is it, or be depleted?
No, it'll be a replenishment. So spoiler alert, we'll be proposing 50,000 to start. And that's really because with the significant investment that we're making and significant debt that we're going to be borrowing, we're really just trying to balance and not have a rate shock if possible, because with the debt repayment, you're going to be increasing your operating, and it's really trying to balance that, but still put some away into reserves.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on this?
Just now you're gonna get the pretty chart.
And
Yeah.
speaking of debt and reserves,
As long as it's either
or
pretty green,
ugly, if you look at it.
He's pretty green.
Right, well, so, direction was provided, I believe at the last meeting. Our original capital plan had Foster Street, Cottage Street, and Commercial Street, maybe even Maple Ave in there, which were very significant projects. Essentially, the town cannot afford to complete within a 5-year span. So the direction was to focus on Foster Street and break that down into a 4-year phased refurbishment, which would be your sections like Mill Street to Union, Union to Cottage, Cottage to Main. Times two. You'd have to break that into 2. So this debt service forecast has been updated to reflect essentially doing Foster on a 5-year, which wouldn't start until 27-28. Because in 25-26, we're doing the transportation plan. In 26-27, we would need to update the design for Foster Street. So we would then have the stormwater management plan information, your transportation plan information, and you can design the most appropriate long-term solution for Foster Street. And then you would begin phase one in the following year, which essentially that debt doesn't come online until 2029. So you can see that even in 27, 28, we do have debt in the budget for wastewater treatment. And at present, there's also some significant fleet replacement of plow trucks within our public works team. So, excuse me, that's where we start to see we're into the red. There. Any questions on this? If we can just go to the next one. So this again is our forecasted debt repayments with the existing version 2 capital plan. So currently I've colored them in the same colors as your FCIs as well from a debt service. So you can see how your debt is gonna increase incrementally here to the tune of 1.5 million by 2031. And that also includes any debt which has come off the books, which is minimal because we do have a couple of significant ones being refinanced within that time period. So.
And I just wanted to note that we did upload this presentation to your council SharePoint site, so if you wanted to also open it now or look through later. And it will go on our website tomorrow.
So, Lisa, you mentioned that those numbers are showing, but aren't we all red on the previous slide? You've got 2 yellows there in the middle.
That's what I was going to say. It was like, how did we miss yellow by just a little bit? What gets us to yellow?
No, I think it should be yellow. Then you go back.
Oh, they
So-
should actually, because they're
Yeah,
below
those-
15%.
Okay, those two
Yeah.
should be yellow.
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
update that.
Just question on that, does that reflect any of the growth that is incurring in revenue in the town in the future?
Yes, so in 26, 27, I did add in $150,000 for taxation, hoping with the manor coming online. And I've also added in 2.5% inflation, and Foster Street that's currently being developed by Bentley's would be included too. But that's it at this point, because I think Benjamin Grove is the other one and we don't have education there, so. Okay, so if we can continue, oh, right there. This is just to remind us that if we're not going to put anything away into our operating reserves, then we will be going into the red. And again, green looks great in 23, 24. The town was really fortunate of, receiving substantial dividends from area, which related to surpluses, which then flowed into your operating reserves. The province did like a one-time doubling of the equalization grant, so that was like 240,000. So it's kind of by chance, not by planning, that the operating reserves were in good shape. But as those kind of pots of money have dried up, we're starting to rely on our operating reserves. I know in this year's budget for 24, 25, I think we have around 230,000 of operating reserves that we utilize to balance the budget, which allowed for a tax decrease this year as well. But because we're depleting them with no plans of replenishing, then we're into the yellow. We're forecasting the same for next year. In the current version 2, there's no plan to replenish. But in our capital plan, there is plans to utilize those funds to complete capital projects, which then 26, 27 were into the red. So certainly something to consider. So one of the questions from council was, what minimum contributions would the town have to make to stay in the yellow? So if we look at the next slide here, and again, this is our operating reserve. So this is just a scenario, essentially $125,000 in the first year. I split it out between sewer and operating, as I mentioned. Staff would be recommending 50,000 to go in from the sewer rate, and 75,000 for the town. And then the next contribution, you're looking at 240,000 in the following year. Again, because even though we could replenish, we're still drawing down those reserves, followed by 100,000 in the next 3 years. And if we can go on, so another FCI related to the reserves is our combined reserve. So this would be the combination of your capital reserves and your operating reserve. Excuse me, at present, these are currently in yellow and quickly go into the red. Oh, sorry, we're anticipating to end this year in the red. So, and again, no plans to replenish. The 27, the big drop that you see is because we do get our CCDF, which is the Canada Community Builds Funds, formerly known as gas tax, that we do get every year. That's been going into a reserve, and we would utilize that to help partially fund, I believe that's Foster Street. So you see it drawn down, and really that is the only consistent transfer into reserves that the town currently has. And that is legislated that it has to go into its own reserve, and it has restrictions on what it may be used for from a capital perspective. So again, trying to run scenarios on what we would need to pull into the yellow. So this again is the combination of the operating and capital. So the operating is the exact same contributions you would have seen from the operating slide, which gets that into the yellow. But you're gonna see substantial dollars here on the capital side. So a $700,000 investment into your reserves would be required just to get you into the yellow. It does subside slightly, and then get you into the green, because currently our 5-year capital plan has no intention of using reserves because we don't have any. And it's very unlikely that we're going to contribute $700,000 to get us into the yellow. But I mean, it is really important to understand that it's a substantial amount that's required just to get you into yellow. But even not putting anything away, this is just gonna get further and further behind. So it may take a while to catch up, but I would strongly encourage council to consider putting anything away to start replenishing these reserves. So this one here, we have, I just wanted to show kind of the historically where we have been for the last couple of years, and then forecasted on where we plan to be. And we've added in the residential tax effort, which essentially is the number of dwellings that you have, and I'm trying to think here. It's essentially the ability that your residents have to pay. It focuses on your residential tax income. It focuses on your residential sewer rate divided by the number of residential dwellings. And then that is divided by your median income. So for this exercise, I took the median income of 6,400, which was the last census data we had from 2021.
64.
400.
What did I say?
6,400.
All those poor people, sorry. Thank you, Jen. Yes, 60,400, and then we applied CPI to that. So it shows that there is still room within the tax base to make the adjustments. And then also shows, again, the, excuse me, red that you're seeing here for your reserves assumes no transfers in 25-26. And your debt service, I just wanted to make sure we understand that we're still looking really good there, but we have made commitments to phase 1 of our wastewater treatment plant, with phase 2 coming right behind it. And there is a lot of debt being proposed within the capital plan. In the fleet and the streets. Yeah. So to end, as we kind of talk about taxes and needs to replenish things, I just wanted to provide a table which essentially shows the impact of a cent on the tax rate. So the first slide utilizes the average residential capped assessment, which we mentioned in the beginning, was around 212,000. So you can see essentially the gray section is where we're at if we do 0 changes, which is $48 a year. Again, here we bill on an interim, so there's a bill in May, there's a bill in September, October. And that would be $24 a bill. And I did have a good dialogue with the resident that was like, you know, if you put my taxes up, you know, it's 2 meals at Kellogg's, I can't go if you wanted to give me a 6-cent tax rate. And he was like, I take my wife out and spend more than that in May, and I might take her out again in November. And he was like, I would give that up if it meant my street got paved. So I thought that was a really interesting analogy that he provided. So, and we also did on the next slide, just so you can see the different level of assessment.
Because most people will say, my house is more than $211,000. So we wanted to provide 2 other options as well to see what the net impact on your tax bill would be.
I wouldn't say most people, but you may hear some people say 350 to 500. Because we do have like 70% of our properties here under cap that are
That's
lower, but yes, other examples, you know, if you're in a community with your constituents and they say, you know, mine's not that, it would be this. Then there are just 2 other charts to kind of help you understand the impact of a cent or whatnot on those different level of assessments.
And if I could just also sort of say it in reverse, because I think one of the comments that we get a lot is you need to decrease my rate. And if you look at these tables, you will not be able to decrease the rate enough to make an impact on someone who has an assessment for $350,000 that they're paying taxes on, to make them feel like they're actually getting a decrease in their bill. And so I think it works both ways, but that's another way to look at it is, unfortunately, with the cap and the way that we apply one rate to all residential properties, whether you're capped or not. The unfortunate thing is we really can't decrease the rate enough to make an impact on a bill that would be more than, what is that, $50? 50 to dollars a year. So just wanted to put that into perspective.
And that concludes our presentation.
A lot of information.
There is a
to
lot of
consider.
information. Yeah, very interesting information. So any questions on any of that at this point? And we will share this on Thursday night
Yes.
again as well to help everyone understand our budgeting stuff.
And this is on there.
And
It's on SharePoint and it will go on the website as well, so that others can view it.
so after hearing all that, I'm gonna suggest we take our 10-minute break now. And then we'll come back and get into those committee reports and our rest of our agenda. Okay, I think we're. Okay, there we are. So we're moving on to department reports, and the first one there is from our fire chief, Luke Redden. And any comments on that? And obviously Luke's not here, but if you have questions for him, we can get back to him. No? Okay, community development, so we.
Not really to do with the report,
Oh,
but to
sorry.
do with the fire department that Robert Bob Henderson was recognized for 30 and 32 years of fire service. I dropped certificates off the other day.
And you missed 31?
When I was over Christmas, he mentioned 30. He mentioned that this year is 32. Could be his last year, so I said, if 2 certificates could show up at my house, I said, I might know a guy.
Okay, I'm just curious when I signed those as to 30 and 32. Okay. Any, so community development, so Council Walsh is not here and was not able to forward
This
his
is the department.
report. Oh, yeah, right, we're gonna do that next. But I'm preparing Katie, because when we get to that, you're gonna, if there's anything you wanna highlight now in your report for the committee, you can do them all now. Because we won't have a committee report.
Right.
Okay, take her away.
Okay, happy to answer any questions, and as noted, we met as Community Development Committee for the first time, since election and new council, had a great meeting and a good turnout. We had some great discussions around some budget items and some capital budget items. And as noted, since the original version, we did decide to, we had proposed, some planning assistance funds to look at doing a redesign of park planning, and decided amongst that group that we were able to offer similar services in-house this year, and we'll move forward with that. So did remove that from the capital plan from this year. That would have been one of the significant changes. But I'm happy to, again, to answer any questions or any comments about the report.
Any questions or comments for Katie? Katie, I noticed we're seeking volunteer nominations. What's the event? Is it volunteer
So,
award ceremony? Because it was last fall.
so we usually have the call open for quite some time. The
Okay.
provincial ceremony is usually in the fall. I'll have to follow up and apologize. I don't have more information on what the plan is for the town, although we did have that drop-by coffee event. I think the intention would be to continue with that, but again, we usually open up the call for nominations quite early in hopes of receiving some before that event in the fall.
All right, yeah, if you could let us know, like, how's, like, that event's on next week, the week after,
Oh,
but we'd
no.
like to know, I think would helpful, and we can have council starting to put the word out as well, to some of the organizations they're involved with for that, so we can try to get a better turnout, so.
Yeah, absolutely. We did put a call out via email to all community groups and organizations last year. But as far as turnout at the event, I know that we were hoping that there were a few more, so that would be appreciated. But yeah, it's in the fall for sure. We do
Our
open it
town
early.
was in the fall?
Yeah, we held it.
Yeah,
later
down
than-
Fire Hall.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah, okay, I couldn't remember when that was, I just know the provincial one was in the fall,
Mhm.
yeah, okay.
I'm just
Yeah, Council James.
quick question on, you're doing advertising for the summer day camp. I see that's coming up.
It is.
Is that to keep it as it was in the previous year, or any increase, decrease? What's your anticipation there?
No, so we did change up the offering slightly last year, changed our age groups and a little bit planning that wise, but as far as this year, we are going forward with same as we did last year, same amount of staff, same amount of camps. Yeah, and we operate on a fluctuations, pay what you can model for day camp, so we'll move forward with that as well this year.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anything further for new development? Thank you, Katie. Okay, Aaron, let's move on to Public Works.
I'll just highlight, the main points and then take any questions that people have. I think you'll notice the report in general is very capital heavy. I mean, we have a substantial amount of capital work underway in various stages of completion or design. From an operational standpoint, we have a lot of holiday decorations that we normally would have removed by this time of year. With the amount of snow we've received, a lot of the direct decorations are still frozen in place. So if we remove them, we'll break them, which will just drive up costs next year. So we are aware that Christmas decorations are not really in style right now, but we don't want to break them. We continue to have some strain on our service delivery with snow removal due to equipment failures. Almost every week this winter, we've had at least one truck, if not two, in for maintenance on the plows or the frames or the engines. Today, with the warm weather this week, we were able to proactively send all 3 plow trucks and the backhoe in for some preventative maintenance that will hopefully get us through the rest of the season. With the warmer weather too, our focus right now, while we're not getting snow, is snow on the medians in between the curbs and the sidewalks, as well as clearing storm drains, so that as this melt happens, it can drain a little bit quicker than it has been. That's our focus. Another thing I'll just mention too, we continue to have failures with our drum screen, which is a pre-treatment filter at the wastewater treatment plant. Anything coming into the ponds is filtered through drum screens. Those are nearing the end of their useful life, and they've had so many repairs over the years that they're no longer balanced. So the more we run them, the more they put strain on things like motors and bushings and bearings and chains. So as we use them, they break. That is something that's in our capital improvement plan for year 3 or 4. And I'll open it up to questions if anyone has any questions about the report.
Counselor Dims.
Just a question on the wastewater upgrades, aeration and blowers. It says you're going to begin work. All the parts are in place in order for you to begin work, or are you still working with the contractor?
We're still working with the contractors. So there's 2 substantial components to that work. One is the equipment, the materials going in the ponds, and the other is the new blowers. So we're in the process of reviewing the final drawings for the blowers and the diffusers going in the ponds. That's underway this week. Everything down to the flanges and the butterfly valves that are going in, we need to review the drawings. Those are very quick reviews. But hopefully by the end of next week, we're about 80% complete with material selection and reviews. Gary Parker Excavating has been ordering. As we review and approve, they're placing orders. So begin work, once we have a substantial amount of equipment, we'll begin the work. It'll happen in stages as equipment arrives. Hopefully this work is completed early summer. We're still on track to do that.
And the problem that you ran in with the drums will have no impact on this?
No.
Okay.
Any other questions? Aaron, I have one. How is comparably are we with salt use and plowing hours compared to last year?
We are substantially higher. We will be over budget. That's something Lisa and I, Director of Finance and myself, will probably come with a recommendation on how we cover that overage probably next month. But as an example, in the month of January, we used as much salt as we used the entire winter last year. it's not just the volume of snowfall, it's the amount of freeze thaws we've had this season too. Every time it warms up in the day and then cools, we have to salt the next morning. At the very least, spot salt. And then with these substantial snowfalls and ice accumulations we've had, it's further added to the stream. So we've used a lot. Again, our January usage was equal to the entire last winter usage of salt itself. So,
Well, we certainly have good years and bad years with the salt.
I'm by no means an expert in El Nino and La Nina. We have, the 4-year El Nino cycle ended last year, and so we're in the La Nina cycle, so it could be that we have 3 more years similar to this year. Again, that's not my expertise by any means, but.
Okay, are we able to move on then? Okay, our Director of Finance.
Okay, I will open it up to questions about my report.
Councilor Serena.
What do you mean by communication is ongoing or continues regarding the ownership of the solar garden?
I
Who
will,
owns it?
So I would. I'm just, maybe in camera, I can update you on that,
Okay.
and then there will be public information at the end of this week, but just to let you know what our strategy is, I think would be an in-camera item, and then there will be some information I can share with council that will also be available publicly near the end of this week.
Okay, sounds good.
The reference is to the UARP ruling that we had in December.
Yeah.
And the response to that.
Yes, okay.
Any questions of Lisa? Lisa, what is our claim for Public Works BC building? I see it's been,
we've submitted it, so I think it's around 125 is what I've submitted, and then the Winmar invoices went directly to the insurance company, so I haven't seen those yet. And the Winmar is the one that did the restoration. So what I submitted was our initial blush we had with the first on site when we first had the flood, and then they came in to mitigate it quickly, and the content replacement. So the actual repairs that were conducted, I haven't seen their invoices yet, so. So not as bad as we thought it would be,
no,
which is good,
no.
which will help with our insurance renewals.
That's what I'm worried about. So if the building is twice, I know people that have houses couldn't get insurance, but 2 smaller claims in that. I know we're business, I know we're town. If you wanna pay, they're gonna probably, but that's what worried me. It's
So on the books, we've only submitted this insurance claim. The other one we paid out of pocket for because it was more minimal from an expense perspective.
Okay, our CAO's report.
The only thing I would highlight that is not in the report is we did hear back last week that our expression of interest that was submitted to Enercan, I believe, for our turbine upgrade, as well as it's a 3-year project. So our turbine, our substation, and the hardware for our smart meters has been approved to move on to the next phase of the application process. So we'll be working with our partners, St. John Energy and the other Maritime Municipal Electric Utility Alliance members on getting those, that grant completed, as well as with our project engineer on the turbine to get that application. I think it was April 4th, April 2nd. April 2nd. It will be a significant amount of work over what was done for the expression of interest, but we do have some great project manager and partnerships to get that information together and submitted, which is 50% funding for all of those projects.
that gonna be two-year project?
I think it's a 3-year capital request, so the turbine was next year and the year after. So it spans 3 years to do these projects. So there's the turbine replacement, there's a substation upgrade so that we will have redundancy in our system, and then the hardware for our smart meter upgrades.
So we'll have nothing from the dam for 3 years.
I think it's expected to come online, I thought it was fall 2027. But again, we're just in the RFP process right now, so it kind of depends on how that flows and the supply chain management side of it.
Councilor James.
Just have a question on the inverters at the solar garden. And they appear to be challenging us.
They are.
Will the third one, that's warranted as well?
So they're all under warranty, and we have submitted extensions for those warranties for all of the ones that are currently installed. We have 28, 42. I know that's a huge gap, but I'm trying to remember how many we have. So we have submitted extensions for those warranties, but all the ones we have replaced so far have been covered under warranty, so they cover the shipment and return of the new and replacement. However, we do have to pay for a Red Seal construction electrician to oversee the replacement in order to be receive the warranty. So our staff can do some of the work, but we still have to get an electrician to come on site and oversee the replacement for everyone.
And loss of revenue is not part of the warranty.
No. We are, though, as I mentioned, we have asked area staff to look into the contracts for any performance bonds or anything related to that, because our solar garden hasn't been operating for more than 14 months. So, and we've had 3 inverters and our transformer go down, one of our transformers. Like, those are significant equipment and pieces of our solar garden. So we are trying to look at other avenues that we may go for. Although they're covered under warranty, the transformer is not covered for transportation of the transformer, and more importantly, the loss of revenue. Because that's half of the solar garden, the transformer.
At least it's in the winter, and
Yeah.
not July.
Yes, must be positive.
Trying.
Do we have any inventory of inverters on hand now?
So I believe we have one, but we did order some spare parts through area. They just are still in Antigonish is where they were delivered to with the rest of the spare parts, so they need to be delivered to the site. But from the highway, you can see that C-can there, so that does have some spare parts in it to build, I believe, one array, or you would have a couple panels and the inverter so that you could replace one of those arrays if they went down.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else, Sarah? Right, let's move along to the next one. Now, the agenda says area. I see a little switch up in the lineup. The screen says audit.
That was, I think area was a verbal report, I didn't receive a written report.
Do we have a meeting since last week?
We have a meeting tomorrow.
We have one
But we
tomorrow.
had one in the city on
Oh, that wasn't,
January 29th.
That was that bad day of driving, I worried
26,
about
it
you
was one
guys
of
all
those
going the
days.
next day.
And we-
that would have been on me to do. I did not do that one. I thought we had covered that. My bad. That was a full-length meeting day for area that day, and I can give you a verbal report. We spent considerable time getting updates on our projects. We began the strategic planning piece, which was probably a good part of the afternoon to get underway with that. We did receive some good news on some changes from NSPI to may impact us financially next year. Our general manager is still working with the details on that. What else did we cover? Do you remember, Jennifer?
We have the financial update, which we get at every.
Yeah, the usual financial update. We get the update on some of the Mahone Bay Riverport. And things are moving along with the transition work that Mahone Bay is now doing with Riverport. More to follow on that tomorrow with particularly some of the loan repayment piece that needs to be put in place.
We had the 23-24 dividend was declared, but it will not be paid at this time, so it's just declared. And the other, so the potential information was in camera.
And we meet tomorrow, but we're meeting virtually the 3 towns.
Strategic planning.
Strategic, yeah. So, yeah. More on the next step of strategic planning tomorrow, which includes the facilitator coming to Berwick and coming to each of the towns. So we'll have follow through on that, and we'll have more coming back to us on the date for that, and when we'll do that, and how we'll do that, who will attend that, sort of thing. Okay. The next one is the Annapolis Valley Regional Library. And again, we don't have Council Walsh's report on that. However, we want to share the letter we have from Regional Director. Is that what's the term?
Chief Executive Officer, so Julia Merritt, who has come and presented to Council in the past, and Council received an update from her at the IMSA orientation back in January, I believe. And so we received an update from Julia last week that the library funding formula review process, regarding that process, and unfortunately, the 25-26 provincial budget did not include any additional funding budgeted for libraries. So they have very little information at this time. The ministry has confirmed it will continue its work on the library funding formula and pursue opportunities where it can. The library board has a regularly scheduled meeting, which was Thursday, to discuss it. Unfortunately, Councillor Walsh isn't here tonight to give us an update on that. But this will be year 3 of a deficit budget for the Annapolis Valley Regional Library, and further service reductions may result to contain this cost, particularly if the bridge funding, which the province had provided to them the last 2 years, does not continue. So there was no indication at this time whether they'll receive that. She also wanted to note that the library's contract with NSUPE Local 23 expires March 31st, 25, and they expecting bargaining to center around living wages. So the CCPA's calculation of the Annapolis Valley living wage 2024 was $26.20. And the Annapolis Valley Regional Library starting wage is $17.76. So the deficit is primarily a result of increasing wages by $2 an hour over the last 2 years per union negotiations. Of course, there is some time yet before any bargaining would be completed. However, this will be a major challenge for 2025. So not great news. Hopefully that bridge finance or bridge funding does come in, but I don't know if you want to talk about any other letters of
Well, I
support
can
that
just
you're-
say that I've heard from Mayor Corkum, and they're looking at creating bit of a response from the municipalities around that, beginning with a letter. See if we can, change provincial government's, decision on thoughts on the library board. So haven't seen the draft of the letter. We did one 6 months ago. No, it would have been 6 months ago. So it would have been 3 months ago. Must have been in November. It was early on. But I think that's one of the intention is to do that again. Yeah. Because it is a very serious issue for our library board and the people that work there.
And the services they provide to our community.
Yeah.
Not that supplement the services that we provide, it's very important to support that.
Yeah, their unique programming is tremendous, and to lose the programming piece for that would be a huge miss. Okay, audit committee, Councilor James.
Met a while ago, 5th of February, and recommended to council, and at the last council meeting, it was approved, as I recall, that Doan Grant Thornton be our new auditors for the next five years. And to thank the previous ones, Morris Brewster and Mike, for their services. We did note that bank reconciliations need additional support and are critical for our audit reviews. So when council is looking at things to provide extra to, that is one thing that should be really looked at, is how we can make sure that we're caught up. This has been going on since 2014. It's not new. And it needs to be brought up to date so that we can say we have clean, clear audits in the future. The audit members are expected to have taken audit training. I expect that they have. And our next meeting will be early in our new fiscal year. Questions? Yes, sir.
We did get our thank you letter out to the last company that did it. We mentioned that. We did get, I just want to know we get it. Thank you.
It was still in progress, but we'll change that to complete.
Okay,
Great. Thanks so much.
Okay, anything further? Okay, community development. Katie gave that on behalf of Council Walsh, so we're done there, and we move on to accessibility committee.
So, the report stands. I think one of the key items is we added Crystal McCormick as a citizen representative, a new member, to our committee at the last meeting. And I think she'll be a real asset to the committee, brings a lot of lived experience, to us, so that will be really helpful. We had a bit of a discussion around the loss of seating in the lobby of Kings Mutual Center, and I don't know if you've noticed that on the weekends the Lions put out tables and chairs so that people can sit and eat in the lobby. But and they've had to put signs on them to say it's just for people who are using the canteen because everyone wants to sit there. So it just underscores how that seating is missed. Yes, go ahead.
I was just gonna say to that one topic, it was mentioned in our tournament as well. Teams that came from away said, where are your comfortable seats that were here? So it's not just that organization, so it's like many.
I guess one of the other comments I'll make, and our virtual meeting system wasn't working very well at our meeting, and it did limit some of the meeting, but for our committee in particular, that ability to attend virtually is really, really important. So good to see that the system's working today. And I want to thank Jordan and Taylor for getting that report done so efficiently. So, really helpful.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to Valley Rend. Councilor Jameson.
Yeah, attended a number of meetings, or 2 meetings anyhow. One I attended virtually and then actually I attended both of them virtually. But just as you may know, the REN is a business development support service for all of the various regions, including Berwick, but covers everything from West Hants, and hopefully at some point, Annapolis County, part of the meeting did cover how a letter of intent to Annapolis County to join as a funding partner. There was a new chair elected, John Bartlett, and the vice chair, Remy, I believe it's
Oh, Crystal Remy.
Christy Remy. I forgot who that was, but I recalled it after I wrote the report who it was, one of those senior moments. But she's from West Hants, so very nice person. But we did meet again to make sure that we would, the letter that was going out to Annapolis County had the right contacts and that we would be looking to the province for its support there. And our contribution was the understanding not to change for the other funding partners. And then I just received some information that the Valley Wren advised that the Cumberland Business Community Connector is doing a sort of a conference, a conference in Fox Harbor. And the event is intended to bring together businesses, leaders, policymakers, and economic development professionals, and to identify growth and in different sectors and to streamline productivity and regulations, and look at new market opportunities, especially in export. So the town is, as I understand it, invited to participate, whether that should be someone from that committee or whether that should be staff. I don't think it needs to be redundant, but we should discuss that at some point in the future as to who may or may not, or whether we should be there, or whether or not information will come back from the REN that they can present to us.
Is there a virtual option?
Haven't heard that yet. It's just
Just
out of the
maps,
gate.
like save the
Yeah.
date.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just out of the gate. So.
Perfect.
Any other questions? And moving on, the next one is our interim ISMA interservice municipal agreement group, which is primarily King's Transit and Valley Waste. And we are still working on the, staff are still working on the report back as to how we will move forward with the organization. So we're waiting for that to come in, and I know the CAOs are involved in that conversation, and that's one of the main purposes of the whole IMSA group, was to get to that. And in the meantime, as we wait for that, they're continuing to manage the two organizations, so, which is King's Transit and dealing with the regular maintenance issues. They have added some tracking software for the buses, so people will be able to know how much late they're gonna be, and be able to know where they are. And they are still working on the proposals for electric buses as well, and changing the fleet to include the electric buses. The King's Transit budget is we had a budget report last meeting, and they are, for the third quarter, they're on track for that. The Valley Waste, again, continuing to manage and doing some upgrades to the Eastern Management Center. That's the one in Lawrencetown. Looking for funding to do that. Purchase some cardboard balers. They're now the depot for motor oil. They get there. And they have received a leader in sustainability in Canada in 2004 by the Cal2 Recycle Organization for the recycling of batteries. It's really interesting to note that the Valley region in Nova Scotia lead the country in recycling efforts, and the Valley, is ahead of most of the other regions in a lot of the recycling. So Valley residents do a tremendous job in that. we were also the first group to sign on with the new changes coming up with the recycling new recycling program that's coming in December. Looking forward to that. That's gonna provide some, not so much, you won't see changes in service, but it'll be changes in who pays for that. We talked about here, major industry will pay for the collection. And it'll save us a fair amount of money, hopefully, once it gets implemented. We see that right. They produce the meeting minute, which is a summary after every meeting. And I don't know, I did check, I don't think does council get that? We should make sure that they do.
I put it in your, there's a folder on your SharePoint site under IMSA organizations, interim IMSA, final meeting minute, so I put it in there every time I get it.
Yeah, it's a nice summary of what happens at those meetings, and much better job than I could do. And so we should make sure that you get a chance to look at that. You can see the work that they're doing. Okay, any questions, Ed?
Just a quick question. We had to go through a process to extend the IMSA agreement last year.
Mhm.
Are we on track does that need to be extended again, or are we on track for this to move forward without any further extensions?
I don't feel I can answer that question adequately right now, but at our next meeting, I'll come back with an update on that.
Thank you.
Staff had suggested some dates to the board, but as to when we're gonna have this progress and finalized, but I'm not sure it's there now.
So it was supposed to be in January. We
Yeah.
were supposed to present something. There's been a few changes that have occurred around the table. So I don't know if we've even set our next CAO meeting at this time. So once that's set, we'll have updates for the board, and one of them will be about the interim MSA expiry date.
I just don't want it to
Absolutely.
miss that opportunity.
Because it is coming up, it's July, I believe, of 25.
Okay, let's move on to any other, unless there's anything else. We're gonna move on to correspondence. So you'll see two pieces of correspondence there. One from the minister, Honorable John Lohr, asking municipal councils to support reduction in interprovincial trade barriers, and to looking at increasing resource development within the province. We've all heard that in the public. The next letter is from the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities that says they're gonna put together greater information to allow us. Oh, the minister wanted us to provide some sort of letter of support back to the department. This letter is to say that the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities is gonna work on something that can be a common shared response back. And then the third letter we have is from an organization, do we have that one in here? Yeah. That says we shouldn't do any of that stuff. So stay tuned. I think we will not plan any response of our own, and we'll wait to see perhaps what NSFM comes out as a recommendation as to how we should be dealing with this thing, so. The next letter then is our actual application from Kings County Senior Safety Society that we will put on file for now, on hold until we deal with that
Okay,
under
because
budget.
I need to declare a conflict. if
Oh,
we're gonna do
no, we're not, we will, so what will happen is once we decide on the budget and the amount that's in the grants organization, then it'll come up in discussion under the various grant requests that we have as to how much we fund and how we do that. But they forwarded there, and it's there for your perusal. And then the third issue one is the Basic Income Nova Scotia public meeting that's being held on Saturday, April 5th. We had an email from Greg Hubbard, who's one of the organizers of that, and wants us to keep it in mind and hopefully put it in your calendars and plan to join them at that point. He's not looking for any financial support for that, but may ask us to consider making some copies of some things for him or providing some support. So when the time comes, we'll hear from him. I'm sure he'll come listening in, calling in, and look for some help. And yeah, and I think Councillor Packanack's involved. in
Well,
that
I
as
was just
well.
gonna say that the Quackernack, it misspelled on that letter, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought that. So again, you could bring us up to speed on things as we get closer to that as well, so. But, okay, any other questions of that? We'll move on to the mayor's report. Any questions of that? We need to work away. So tomorrow we have area meeting, and then I have an interesting meeting that NSFM has coordinated for mayors and CAOs in the province to, it's a virtual one on the legislature. So I have no idea what that means. So there may be some issues of which they want to bring to our attention that's happening in the legislature. I'll let you know my weekly update with what is coming back. Okay, so we will call for, we need to go into a special council meeting. So we'll call for adjournment on our committee of the whole. Councillor Goddard, we have seconder, Councillor Sereno, all those in favor say aye. Aye. I'll now call to order a special meeting of council to deal with the Benjamin Grove development. So it is a one item agenda. And we do have a recommendation for a motion that's back. Can you put that back up, please, Krista? And I'm gonna scroll and scroll until I find it here. Who did this? Okay, so we've had the presentation, we've had the recommendation for PAC, we've had the public hearing, we've had the additional request to our planner to for some additional items. We've had that tonight, and we now have the opportunity to make a motion, and I think we're at the point that we would entertain the motion, and then we can have some discussion on the motion and go from there. And this, we do need to make, you're only able to make a positive motion, so we would need to put a positive motion on the table. So does anyone, Councilor Dempsey, which motion?
The council approved the draft development for Benjamin Grove submitted by 326-285 Nova Scotia brackets, Nick Bentley end brackets, permit up to 120 apartment units in Rodeo on PID 552-40048. My eyes didn't.
Yeah, I think yours did really well. I didn't quite that specific, but that's great. Thank you, Councilor Davis. Do we have a second for that? Councilor Sereno. Okay, any further discussion on this? Councilor.
I personally feel quite strongly that that driveway is not wide enough. I'm really concerned that at 8 o'clock in the morning, that 100 cars coming out that driveway, and you got 30 young children walking there going to school. There's barely enough room for 2 cars to pass there. And I think that the traffic problems created overshadow this development.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councilor.
I'm just gonna make a comment about the fact that I recognize that Commercial Street in particular creates some real challenges. And I believe that there are some options that we can look at in the future that don't have to impact whether we approve or not approve the development plan to address those things. So I understand your concern, Chris, but I do think we can.
So there's some other work on the Commercial Street end of that.
Yeah, something to slow traffic down.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, then we can call for question. All those in favor say aye. Aye, that's 4, and contrary-minded?
Nay.
And would you like your name recorded?
Yes, please.
You want to record that? Thank you very much. Motion's carried.
You have to vote though.
Oh, I'll vote in the A as well, so.
So it's
Yeah.
5.
5, yeah. 5, I'm missing one. Okay, and now we can call for a motion to adjourn.
I do have one item
Oh,
that,
I thought I said we have one more
and
item.
I tried to jump in.
Okay.
And
Go
we
ahead.
have to do the meeting camera as well.
Right, we're gonna go into that next.
Okay, so, as I mentioned earlier about our turbine project, so our consultant is working with FCM to submit a proposal or grant application for the Green Municipal Fund. Typically that would go through under Berwick Electric Commission. However, we're exploring the option of if the town submits the application, we may get a more favorable interest rate than going through the Berwick Electric. Lisa would have to speak to how that works once we get the grant. But FCM application requires a motion from council. Since Javier is preparing the application, we need a motion from council supporting the project so that it gives him permission to move forward with that application.
Okay, so the motion would be to support the.
Green Municipal Fund application for the replacement of the Factory Vale turbine.
Okay, do we have someone who will make that motion? Councilor Serena, do we have a seconder? Councilor Goddard. Okay, any further discussion on that motion?
Okay, just a question, will that impact on the town's?
Debt?
Hmm?
The debt, is that what you're
Yes.
wondering? Potentially.
How much higher does the red line go?
Essentially, it should be a net zero because your own source revenue would increase using the BEC to make the repayments. So historically, when we place any debentures with BEC, it doesn't impact, and where it would be funded from BEC. Debt service would be covered 100%, not impacted.
And would we have to draw up a debenture or a line or some sort of loan requirement between the two entities?
So it's we would still apply, excuse me, under the town of Berwick, for ministerial approval. But it recognizes BEC as being the, not owner of the debt, but
The end user.
yes.
Deputy Mayor.
Do we get into a property thing again? Like, do we then own the turbine, but Berwick Electric owns everything else that's there? That's not okay. I just want to know if the town of Berwick gets this turbine, how does that affect?
So it already is owned by the town of Berwick, for the Berwick, the act establishing the Berwick Electric Commission. The town of Berwick owns the assets of,
Okay.
so we're okay there.
Any further questions on this? Okay, all those in favor say aye. And any contrary-minded? Motion carried. Okay, now we'll have a motion to go in camera.
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay,
Happy, I'm very happy.
okay, so a motion to go in camera. Councilor Serena, thank you. Okay. Seconded that. All those in favor? Motion's carried. We are now in camera and